We spoke a little bit about that before as far as the American end of that, but we're not the only ones. There are different countries around the world that if left alone, they could be completely self-sufficient, and they know that. So you have to get in there with your hooks in every civilization around the world. And we've talked a lot about how there's a reorganization of investment that's kind of going around the equatorial regions of the planet. And then you see articles like this, and it goes through World War I and World War II, and you know how hunger was a major problem through those unfortunate events. But they're trying to set up this event again, where they could say, well, it wasn't our fault. We tried. We tried to keep it together, but, we just couldn't do it. It was because of them. I think that most people would get a great wake-up call, at least those that don't depend on the government, that their lives would kind of continue unchecked there for a while everyone else would be panicking about failing because the government's failing. They forget we used to live in a country where the government didn't have their hand in every single thing that you did. So at one time, people were living out there where they lived at their house. They took care of their food. They took care of any kind of utility needs that they had. They took care of it themselves. And they still found time to, have social lives and have a presence in their local religious center. They did all these things while working full time and having lots and lots of children. I don't know if time was moving slower back then, or it's just that there's a 1,000% increase in fake reality distraction nowadays, if that's what indeed is going on. And they throw a wrench in this spiral of the U.S. into a crashing entity. It showed that human beings, when given a chance, will work together and have a sense of pride in their community, no matter what color they are. So what they had to do is drive that separation back down in there again. Now we're at this point where they're throwing all this stuff, and it scares me because even if it's a legit movement going on, the powers that be will use it for what they've been wanting to do for a long time, which is to complete their one world order or their great reset. They can't do it without doing one thing that Americans have, the right to have free speech and pursue your happiness. That terrifies them. They hate it. They have to destroy it. Because once you know that you have the right to exist and you have the right to think, well, that allows you to give that same right in your behavior to someone else, because you wouldn't want those rights stripped from you. So, of course, the people that believe in those rights would not want to strip them from other people. And that's where I think they're trying to derail the American people. And if they can't get it going culturally, they'll starve us until people are so upset and so irritated that it'll just be one match that's struck that will set the whole thing on fire. And I think that's what they're going for. And you see that in the inflation. I just watched a YouTube video earlier where a guy was walking around Costco comparing prices of a video he did just 1 year ago. And he was saying, I don't think that if something costs this much and then it's double the price in 1 year, that's 17% inflation. That's more like 75 to 100% inflation.
Outcome of a million mistakes. What you are about to watch is a nightmare. It is not meant to be prophetic. It need not happen. It's the fervent and urgent prayer of all men of goodwill that it never shall happen. But in this place, in this moment, it does happen. In the midst of it comes unexpectedly over the phone the announcement of the President of the United States, the warning from the very top declaring a state of emergency of suspected enemy missiles approaching. It's anyone's guess where they might land. What city will be obliterated? How many could be lost? And last but not least, will it be me? Will it be my family, friends, my square inch on the map? Minutes go by and nothing. Right as you exhale a breath of relief, an instant wave of horror treks down your spine and a sinking feeling in the pits of your stomach. Just then the power goes out. The only light you see is the glow of your phone. Shining in your face, the icons of terror. Low battery, and even more frightening, the symbol for connection to information and loved ones gone. You try the landline in your office, desperate to contact family. Nothing at all, just a bone-chilling empty silence. Panic-stricken, you blindly forage for your car keys. Success. Something in this nightmare of a day has gone right. Now it's a desperate mad dash for your car. Your mind now in a near intellectual paralysis. Logic a struggle as you cope with a Gatling gun barrage of horrific ideas of what your family might be going through in this very moment. Miraculously, your car starts and you begin your seemingly apocalyptic drive to locate your kin. As you pass the first stop sign, the sight of civic decay is already bearing its nasty head as you speed past fights in the streets, looting and a complete halt of any semblance of an evolved civilization. To your right, a large fire. As angry, fear-filled citizens with their arms full of grocery items run from what used to be your local food market ran by a mom and pop's couple now collapses into a bonfire of dreams. Because of the commotion, your attention span has been stolen. Now before your automobile is a violent crowd. They have now surrounded your car, banging on the metal, bashing at the glass, screaming incoherently. What just a second ago was the road to salvation, now a deadly trap of circumstance and fear blocking your escape. This can't be happening, repeatedly echoing in your head as you start to mumble the phrase in a shrieking, inaudible, childlike tone to yourself. The trepidation now filling your lungs like a poison fog, suffocating and smothering in its certainty. Just then, as your heart and soul seem to be having synergistic perturbations, an alarm blares, overwhelming your senses. Immediately, you recall the warning of missiles. You close your eyes and expect the end. But the alarm morphs into a sweet, familiar beckoning of your alarm clock. You open your eyes and switch off the welcoming timepiece. A warm filling of relief as you realize your family is safe in their beds, and no pending doom is written in the stars today. For a split second, you ponder the poor people of your vision, and it reinforces your confidence that you have already prepared for the any scenario. You have peace of mind your children will eat and thrive, because you invested in their future to give some stability if any break in the normality of life happens. You invested in heaven's harvest. The you in this story was a fictional you. But do you get the feeling something unthinkable is going to happen soon? I sure do. The problem is we probably won't see it coming. One morning you'll wake up and the world will be a much different place. Don't panic, prepare. Smart folks are investing in emergency food now. A wise man once said, "It's better to have it and not need it than need it and not have it." Heaven's Harvest is the nation's leader in emergency food storage. It's the only investment you get 100% of your money for, even better than gold. Survival experts recommend the 3-month emergency food kit. Go to heavensharvest.com. Use the code ADAPT at checkout and save a mind-blowing 15%.
And now on with the video. But I will not get drawn into this whole media meme with Clown Hill, if for a better term, pushing people in to start fighting each other for no reason. That the human mechanism is stability. You have to be forced into that fighting. And if we all say no, we're not going to use our energy for that. We're going to use our energy to point at the true villain, and we're going to use our energy to rebuild our society. And we're going to use that energy to make not only this country, but the world great again, away from parasite control. That's where it needs to go to. I refuse to put my energy into any civil splitting of humanity. We're all made in the image of God. We are from the Creator. I am. I'm a part of creation. I'm a part of the Creator. Everybody is part of that same creation and part of that same Creator. So to try to get us to think that we are nothing more than an expression of creation, that somehow we're supposed to divide that based on an ideology, that's insanity. Truly insanity. We got better things to do with our time, like growing your food, setting up your communities, getting your communities ready for these changes. We're going to be rocking through a change here pretty quick. Things are in motion that just can't be stopped. You look at a big heavy train that's, a mile long, full of coal. That thing's not going to stop for miles, plural. Even if they hit the brakes full on and lock every carriage up, that's going to skid for a bit. This is the same exact thing. You hit a really good point there about rolling the clock back, or the years back, the calendar back a bit. We were self-sufficient. Now, for those of you that don't know, 40% of everything eaten in an American home in World War II, I'm talking everything, was in the household. And you might say, yeah, well, they had a bunch of farms back then thing. No, I'm talking about the full Victory Garden program. We're talking in cities. They were still able to produce 40% in a city by using the disused land, the area between roads, people's homes, etc. And that was on the home level at 40% ability to sustain yourself. Because in a video earlier today that I did, there was somebody who put a tweet out that showed $90 worth of their groceries. And they were appalled, just jaw dropped, gobsmacked, like talking 70% inflation. But I looked at what they had there. They had a handful of vegetables, and I'm like, most of those you could grow if you had a small balcony. You could grow that. Tomato plants, some celery. I think they had some shallot onions, and even little tiny cucumbers. I mean, you have dwarf varieties of cucumber you can grow on a windowsill. But I was just looking there going, no way, you can grow a lot of that, yet the training to do that, I don't fault that person for complaining at the prices of the groceries or fault them at all for not having the training to be able to grow food, because that just was completely wiped out after World War II, moving into the 1950s and 60s. They wanted to get you completely back on that system. And I know we had this conversation before. And after World War II, of the total consumption of all meats, including farmers and not just neighborhoods, it was around 60% of everything locally was completely self-sufficient. The only thing they really needed were refined motor fuels, steel, and this types of things that they couldn't make in their own local neighborhoods. Outside of that, everything that was consumed in the human body in terms of foodstuffs all came within like a 50-mile radius, and it was very self-sufficient during that time. I can't say 100 because I don't have that exact fact, but I know I can guarantee 60. After World War II, life is so easy. We're going to go to the Green Revolution, and we're going to mechanize everything, and we're going to set up these supermarkets. You don't have to grow your stuff anymore. Why would you waste your time? It's so easy. It's so fresh. It's so cheap. And they got us away from that. So I was actually in Costco and Sam's Club today as well. I went to both because, my supplies were getting a little low, and I thought, with all the craziness going on, I probably wanted to go out to the store. Plus, I had a chance to spend the afternoon with my dad, which is super cool. So he went shopping with me, and we ended up talking about all things the oil embargo, because we went by Costco for a second, and it kind of scared me a minute because there were like 7 or 8 cars in each pump. And I go, oh, no, what is that? How many cars? Look how many cars are waiting. And he goes, oh, it's like that all the time. Because I hardly ever go there, like a once in a seriously blue moon. And I was like, they wait 6 or 7 cars deep to save like 30 cents on a gallon. He's like, oh, it's like that every day. So we started talking about the oil embargo from the 1970s because I was a little too young. I remember sitting in the car with my mom because my mom would be the one to go get fuel when my dad was at work. We always needed to make sure that my dad had fuel to get to work the next day. So I had a chance to talk to my dad, and I was like, all right, break it down for me. Like, really, the fuel embargo and the whole story stemmed from a video I'd done today, too. That same tweet about the person complaining of $90 worth of groceries when they could have produced half of what they bought for cents or pennies. And also they were complaining about, oh, this chicken's so expensive. Oh, this meat is so expensive. I'm like, well, do you know your local farmer? Like, do you go anywhere where there's a local farm? Like, do you know any of that stuff? Or do you just exclusively shop downtown somewhere? Getting into the strategic petroleum reserves in America right now, for anybody out there, as a fact, there's only 17 days of strategic petroleum reserves available for Americans. And I was telling my dad this, and he's like, oh, wow. Sounds like if they turn it off or if something happens, then we're not going to have any petrol. And that's how the whole conversation started about the oil embargo in the 70s. So I was asking him about it, and he's like, yeah, it wasn't like every station had cars snaking around the block, and it depended on what time you went, if you went super early or super late just before they closed. He was very clean that, yes, there were some places in cities where the lines just wrapped and wrapped and wrapped around the blocks, people waiting. And they didn't idle their cars. They restarted them every single time to save the petrol, because there was no, like, each time a car moved, you started your car, and you burned the starter and you moved up one position, right? Nobody was idling anything. He was telling me about the gas wars where, there'd be 2 petrol stations across the street from each other, and some places would offer it for like 35 cents, and then the other place across the street would offer it for like 32 cents per gallon in the United States in the 1970s. But he's like, during the oil embargo, the prices jumped astronomically. So I said, well, what was astronomical? I mean, how much was it? And he goes, about $1.20. From 35 cents to $1.20. Maybe some expensive places will call it $1.50. And he looks at the signs, and we drove by a couple petrol stations as we were going about our day, and it was like $3.25 here in East Tennessee right now. And he looks at me, starts grinning. He goes, look at that price. Even when we had the exceptional, unbelievable price rises that freaked everybody out during the oil embargo, that was still a discount bargain price to what we're paying today. And that really kind of set it in, framed it really well for me, that the U.S. dollar will be rejected by nations around the world as a means of trade, which winds back to the oil embargo part. Monarchies and OPEC nations now are in the BRICS and the Belt and Road Initiative and the Shanghai Cooperation Organization. And they will settle with gold or any kind of commodity that can be traded amongst nations. And I'm just curious, when it starts to make it through the mainstream American psyche, that our dollar is going to be worth less and less and less. Because that term hyperinflation that you hear, it is a psychological triggering of extreme spending the second you get your money, because you know it's going to devalue. So example, Argentina, I covered this yesterday in my video on ADAPT 2030. The Argentinian peso currently is devaluing at 12% per month. So that means if you get paid on the first and you kind of hold your money and you only spend a little bit on the first to buy food, and maybe on the second you get some gas, and on the third you buy some fertilizer, and then on the fourth you get some dog food, and then on the fifth you get some clothes for the family, and on the sixth you go out for dinner. All right, so when you wind up 2 weeks later, you've lost 6% of your purchasing power. Now, if you wait a full 30 days, everything's going to be 12% more expensive for you. The awareness is in Argentina, so the same day that they get it, everything flows into the economy in a single day. And then for the rest of the month, there's nothing. Zero. I mean, there is some minimal spending, but I mean, comparatively, that's not an averaged or balanced spending in any way, shape, or form. Everybody spends the same day they get, and depending on the payday, so here in America, mostly it's the 1st and the 15th. But I know veterans getting benefits and those on EBT programs, et cetera, they only get once a month. So can you imagine everybody across America understanding that America is going into, like you're saying, 70% inflation, 70% on the year. So what does that break down to per month? So you have to realize that every time you hold your money, it's going to lose 6%. So it's going to cost you 6% more to buy everything, as you entailed with the person comparing the supermarket prices. The hyperinflation thing is going to be a trigger of psychology in the mind where the money doesn't devalue because of government action, although it is indirectly. It's the awareness of the populace. Each day they wait, or each hour, or each week they wait, that they're not going to be able to buy as much, so everybody's going to get on the same bandwagon that they need to spend everything immediately as quickly as they get it. Now this becomes a nasty reinforcing feedback loop. And it only takes really that first or second time of everybody spending on a day, and then the mechanism, as you understand, the stable economy is broken. And at that point, that's when you start to see these chapters of hyperinflation. I've done a ton of study on this, and I'll just say from what I've read and what I've written down and done videos on and spoken with others, it's about 5 months. 5 months. So if you're going to actuate and have an exit plan for your gold or silver or whatever you have, jewelry, anything, house, currency will be revalued at least once or twice during that time. You're going to want to hit it on the first currency revaluation, and 5 months is pretty much what you get out of it. So if you think you're going to be able to continually rise prices for several years into the hyperinflation and buy a farm for an old penny, that ain't happening. So you're going to have to time it sort of correctly. When you see the hyperinflation, it's going to start hitting the news. You're going to see tons of lines outside the stores on those paydays. Once you see that, you need to start getting your affairs in order very quickly. 5 months is the maximum roll most times on a hyperinflative event. So anyway, I hope that explained a little bit about your supermarket pricing, and that person did a really good job going back in with the video to show pre and now current prices
In the ancient world, gold was magical. Gold was a manifestation of the sacred, and objects fashioned from it were a means of connecting with a supernatural world. Far from passive deposits of wealth, gold was sacred. It was greatly prized in cult. Objects made of gold were active agents in an ongoing engagement with powerful forces. The Inca used gold to make ritual objects, combinations of gold and silver and gold and copper called tumbaga. Wearing gold jewelry was a sign of a person's wealth and power. For the Inca, gold was also the blood of Viracocha, their sun god. For the Mayan people and many others in ancient America, gold was part of a complex symbolic system. Gold is mentioned in Greek mythology for examples as varied as King Midas, the golden fleece stolen by Jason who possessed the power of resurrection, through to the golden apples of Hesperides. The golden apples were guarded by the 100-headed dragon Ladon. The dragon conferred immortality on whoever ate them. Over the past 5,000 years, from the Egyptian pharaohs and the merchants of 14th century Venice to world governments in the space age, man has treasured gold for its utility and value during times of both prosperity and disparity. Through the rise and fall of great dynasties and civilizations, gold has maintained its purchasing power as a reliable store of value for millennia. Gold has been used as money since 560 BC, when King Croesus of Lydia created a gold coin in his own image. Ever since, it has continued to increase its long-term value and remains the world's most universally accepted form of money. Today, the demand for gold continues to flourish globally. History proves that fiat paper money is designed to go to zero through inflation, whereas gold has intrinsic value in which it maintains forever. Paper money is a debt instrument. Gold is an asset of wealth in its own right. It does not depend upon any governments, corporations, or individuals' promise to repay. ITM Trading has spent the last 27 plus years developing a team of expert researchers and analysts to make this possible. Simply put, we build strategies which are historically proven to protect your wealth and assets through any economic downturn or currency collapse. Schedule your free gold and silver strategy call 866-834-1422. That's 866-834-1422. Or go to learn.itmtrading.com/MIAC and keep watching Mountain High Time and Mini Ice Age Conversations if you know what's good for you.
Yeah, it seems to be all set up where, they have a plethora of excuses why food is about to go up. And, we've been talking about this just about for 2 years straight. And I'm just looking like the companies are freaking out also because, there's new trends of people worried that they're taking too many pharmaceutical drugs and they're not going to be spending as much money on the food that's out there. And then, I saw this article kind of gets to the meat of what's going on around the world, where it talks about, will World War III be the excuse for extreme food rationing across America? And I was just thinking, that might be one of them. And it seems like that they're headed full steam for this and that they have to have this. The whole reorganization of the world depends on them changing some, elements of the world right now. We spoke a little bit about that before as far as the American end of that, but we're not the only ones. There are different countries around the world that if left alone, they could be completely self-sufficient, and they know that. So you have to get in there with your hooks in every civilization around the world. And we've talked a lot about how there's a reorganization of investment that's kind of going around the equatorial regions of the planet. And then you see articles like this, and it goes through World War I and World War II, and, how hunger was a major problem through those unfortunate events. But they're trying to set up this event again. And just think about all of the chicanery that's going on, the shenanigans in Washington, D.C., wouldn't it be great for them if any number of things happened where they could say, well, it wasn't our fault. We tried. We tried to keep it together, but, we just couldn't do it. It was because of them. If the dollar busts, that would be a great one for the politicians. Because, they'll be like, oh, it's not our fault. And then one side will be blaming the debt and the other side will be blaming that they shut down the government so many times and they wouldn't let their socialistic programs go through. So there'll be a bunch of finger pointing. And what better way to get out of that than historically where you reset financial systems by having a world war and pay attention to the economic points. That explains everything about how things get reorganized from start to finish. If you don't think that the world powers are willing to collapse a society, strip its wealth, and convert it to a new kind of wealth so that they can use it for their own programs, you have not studied history at all. They absolutely do that, and I see all signs of them doing that now. It's just a more technological implementing of World War II. It's not going to be exactly like that. They're not going to go door to door and try to do that because the world won't let them. They already played that card. They already did that. They already did the theater of war on the whole world once. But all of those people are now dead or dying. So this is the perfect time to do it again because they know that people are uneducated about historical events, where some of the philosophies like Marxism, socialism, and et cetera came from. They're unaware of the plurality of power that the elite have used for some time, meaning that there always has to be an enemy on one side or the other. The youth, if you ask any person under 30, I bet most of them don't know that the United States set up Stalin, gave him money, gave him aid. I bet they don't know that we also did the same for Mao in China. So these are the banks and the world powers doing these proxy wars until they have what they want. So it doesn't matter how they get it. They can starve the people, which is a classic form of weapon that they've used in every war that I can think of. Even the war between the Apache Geronimo and the U.S. government was ended not because of brute force, but because they stopped all the lines of food. They basically starved the Apache out until they had to give up. Otherwise, they would die of starvation. You name which war. You can pick the Iraq War from 1991 till 2001 and into 2010, and where probably about 2 million people died of starvation and secondary causes due to the destabilization of the war. And now we fast forward to now, and we had that war, right? And we went in there and we took all our contractors and we put American business in there and we set up all kinds of stuff. And now by the end of this year, Iraq will be completely de-dollared. In other words, all transactions that are done in the area of this place that we destabilized and then propped up with our own government is now going to be doing business against the United States. So all those millions of dollars we put into it, not only from destroying it, but trying to rebuild infrastructure, is now going to be used to make money in another currency competing with the U.S. dollar. And if you look around from country to country, this is increasing. So the United States and the petrodollar is becoming outnumbered. This seems to be an exponential rate. That's a factual thing that it will happen. And if you've ever listened to people like Ron Paul and other financial experts, they've told us that the fiat currency will pop eventually. And it seems like right now it'll be the perfect scapegoat to not only enter into World War III, but explain away how and why the standard of living in the Western world has dropped to a dramatic low.
That was a Charlie Foxtrot going up in there and taking over that country because Gaddafi wanted to move over to, that was Libya. Hussein wanted to move over to gold-backed currency just like Gaddafi did. Now, at that point, the American military was super, super strong, and we just overused that. And you want to call him a dictator, okay, that's what we know in the news. An American was fed as a dictator. Those people were ruled with an iron fist because they had to try to control the tribalism. But then they wanted to do good things with that money and get bring their countries up. Literacy, cleanliness, water programs, hygiene, they cared about their people. And the way that we portray them in the media is something completely different than what they were trying to accomplish with their nations by breaking free from this American homogenate, using the U.S. dollar and be beholden to it and having it as the only thing. They wanted to set up gold systems for payment back then. That's why we went in there. It was about stopping a gold-backed currency from forming in the Middle East. Pure and simple. That's all it was about. And all the other narratives spun in there about the oil and this, that, and the other. So on the Mini Ice Age Conversations podcast channel, reading through the comment box here, talking about Hungary, 1946, inflation was only 44%. And then this is 567 by 890X, giving this comment out here. And then, so at the end of July 1946, inflation rate was 41.9 quadrillion %, causing prices to double every 15.6 hours. Can you think about that for a second? Prices doubled every 15 hours. You would have to be paid by the hour, literally maybe hourly payment. I work for an hour. You got to give me the money so I can go buy bread for my family, and then I'll be back. Because at the end of the day, you would have lost 50%. Imagine working a 12-hour day for somebody, working hard. You're out in the farm fields, you're doing a factory job, whatever, and you're in there for 12 hours. But by the time you get out of that to go buy anything, whatever your wages were only bought you 50% of what you went in the morning. And Sassafras wanted to come over to the U.S. debt clock, because I actually did this on a video just a couple days ago. So if everybody wants to go out to usdebtclock.org, and also there were some anomalies in the usdebtclock.org, because when I'd done the video in the morning, it was still at 33.1 trillion, but by the afternoon, somebody sent me a couple screen grabs that said, hey, it jumped to 33.4 trillion in an afternoon. But anyway, if you go to the right side, there was the dollar to silver ratio that was $0 per ounce. Well, they've added a couple new columns there to explain it. So the dollar supply is now going negative. So when you pull money out of circulation and take it in negative, that explains why there was $0 per ounce on the gold to dollar ratio and $0 per ounce on the dollar to silver ratio. But now they've revamped it. Now they actually have the dollar to silver ratio over a 5-year average and then a dollar to silver ratio on a 10-year average. So if you're listening and you can't go to usdebtclock.org, if things were to stick currently with the amount of debt we have, with the amount of silver we have here in America, if you're going to look at the 5-year average, it's $1,558 per ounce. And if you're looking at the 10-year average, obviously it wasn't as bad 10 years ago, so we're looking at $1,120 per ounce. Now, the thing is, if you do the dollar to gold ratio on a 5-year average, it's only $12,596, which is far, 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 far less than, because it's $2,000 per ounce today. So that's a 6x increase. But if you look at the silver ratio, if it really reached parity with the debt around the world to the amount of silver ounces around the world and it became monetary again, or even used in industrial applications as a value itself, because you're going to have to buy it at the rate of monetary metals. I don't care if you need it for wires in a computer. Don't care. You're going to be buying at monetary value. People think it's $25 an ounce now. Well, if you're actually going to do the ratio of that of all the U.S. national debt squeezed into the amounts of ounces of silver that we have here, you're looking at $1,500 per ounce. So at $25 up to $1,500, that's a far greater exponent. What's that, 80x compared to $12,000 on the gold ratio, which is just a 6x. For those of you out here who can't see the usdebtclock.org, they've added an entirely new column in here. The G7 GDP to gold ratio and the BRICS GDP to gold ratio. So those are two new different metrics. The G7 GDP is $72,000 per ounce on that, and the BRICS GDP ratio is $134,000. Whatever way you look at it, something's going to break free here, and the only thing holding down currently, the only thing holding the price where it is at $25 or $2,000, it's probably $1,970 today, $1,970 on the gold price. The only thing holding that down is the artificial markets on the paper contracts holding short. Shanghai is just starting to break this. Now, Shanghai today, for those of you who didn't get the news, is offering $140 more in Shanghai for the same 1 ounce of gold. So now we're starting to get multiple prices across the planet for gold. Now, what Shanghai is trying to do is, in the Shanghai Gold Exchange, is bring all the world's gold supply into China. Now, currently at $140, I guess if you have your own private aircraft and you can get a hold of a bunch of physical, you could roll it over there and, take some premium on that. If you had a 1,000-ounce bar, ask a premium for that on top of that and probably come up with $150,000 extra dollars away from what you paid for it over here in America. Great. Well, I was going there on a business trip anyway. I just made $150,000 on the trip. Great. Thanks, COMEX. I'll take delivery of that. But the eventuality forecast pricing in Shanghai will be $250 over what the American prices or the British on the London Bullion Metals Exchange are going to be. But think about the gold arbitrage opportunities. What if it's $1,000 an ounce? And you take a 1,000-ounce gold bar, you just made $1 million in a single day by moving a piece of metal on an airplane to a different country. And you can do that all day long. Dude, round trip, I'm getting a private pilot. We're going to roll another 1,000-ounce gold bar down there. Boom, another $1 million. Can you imagine people arbitraging on a $1,000 difference on the ounce of gold price and just taking physical delivery in either London or United States, or coming in and just buying stuff online, accumulating a bunch of it, and then running it over to China? Now, eventually, it's going to start trending way, way, way higher. So what if the COMEX tries to keep it at 3,000, but Shanghai offers 5,000? And you got a $3,000 arbitrage on that? Even me, I'm going to be like, all right, let's see what we can do about that. And eventually something is going to break. And see, they're doing this on purpose. This is an actual ploy. This is a way to break the American dollar without firing a single shot. I could just keep offering more money over in China to buy your gold, and eventually all the flows of all the gold are going to head over to China or Russia or whatever. Maybe Brazil will also offer a huge arbitrage opportunity. Hell, it'll save me a lot of jet fuel on my plane getting down there with 1,000 ounces every trip. Think about that. A 2-hour trip to Brazil on an aircraft with 1,000 ounces of gold. Arbitrage, where the price of gold is double around the world outside of the American control of the COMEX and the British control at the LBMA, and everywhere else around the world is offering double the price of gold. Well, you know what? That gold's going to get siphoned out so fast, they're going to be everybody asking for physical delivery, and that is going to bring the house down. They're going to try to offer physical cash, but there's a lot of strong-arm players out there that are like, bro, I want my 1,000-ounce bar. Give it to me. Because as soon as I move that thing, I'm going to make $2 million or $3 million by taking a 2-hour aircraft trip down to another country. Everybody's going to be like, no. I'm not taking cash settlement, bro. Forget it. I'm not even going to take any new contracts with you. Forget it. We're done. I'll cash settle. But I'm going to buy everything I can off an online exchange. And you know what? After that, no new contracts will be issued. And that is the end, the absolute end of the U.S. dollar. If they cannot control the gold price, then what you understand is the U.S. dollar, the finance system, and England, or the Bank of England, they're both in the same boat, and the euro too. Like, if you want to take down 3 major economies on the planet, just keep letting the gold price run up and offer more in a different nation to pull all the gold. But you got to make it juicy enough that everybody wants to get physical and move it out of the countries. This is going to be a big business moving metals across the planet here, I assure you. And as the economies are collapsing and things start to, devalue pre-hyperinflation, it's just going to incentivize people to move their metals across borders. It's going to be crazy here in a few minutes. Like, seriously, if you are not getting ready right now for some of these changes, you're going to be left in the soup and bread line.